Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the Old Testament book of Numbers. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's a book famous for wandering, rebellion, and a whole lot of failure. But what if I told you that hidden inside all of that is a powerful, unexpected story of hope? So we're going to tackle this one central question that I think completely reframes the whole book. What if all that history of failure isn't actually the main point? What if it's all a setup, a narrative pointing towards a much, much greater fulfillment that was still to come? All right, to get to the hope, we've got to start with the problem. And the book of Numbers puts this epic contrast on full display over and over again. You've got God's unwavering faithfulness on one side, and on the other, the stubborn, persistent unbelief of his people. It really poses the question, how does a perfectly faithful God handle a completely faithless people? I mean, picture this. The original plan, it was supposed to be simple, a quick little trip from Mount Sinai straight into the Promised Land. But right at the finish line, at the very border, the people just rebelled. They refused to trust God. And that one moment of unbelief, it turned what should have been a short journey into a 40-year ordeal out in the desert. 40 years. And this is the absolute key. The core problem wasn't that the enemies were too big or the path was too hard. It was unbelief. Plain and simple. And this massive, catastrophic failure showed just how deep their need was. They needed a better obedience than they could ever muster up, and frankly, a greater leader than they had. So, if the story is just failure after failure, where's this hope I was talking about? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. This is where we start to dig a little deeper, to look for patterns, for clues. You might even call them shadows of a future hope that are hidden right in the middle of these stories of failure. And to do that, we're going to need a special kind of key. And that key is this idea of shadow and substance. It's a pretty cool concept. The idea is that a lot of what happens in the Old Testament, the events, the people, the objects, they're like shadows. They're real, they actually happened, but their shape points forward to a greater reality. The substance that's casting the shadow. And Christians believe that substance is ultimately Jesus Christ. So with that key in hand, we can start to unlock these incredible pictures of a Savior that are hidden all over the wilderness. We're going to look at just a few of these shadows and numbers that honestly paint a shockingly clear picture of Christ. Okay, our first picture kicks off with total disaster. The people of Israel sin. Surprise, surprise, they rebel again. And this time, God sends a judgment. Venomous, fiery serpents. People are being bitten and death is spreading like wildfire. And right in the middle of this chaos, God gives Moses this very strange command. Let's just break down the remedy here. You've got sin, you've got judgment, but then you get salvation. And get this, God doesn't tell them to perform some complicated ritual or offer a bunch of sacrifices. No, the solution is incredibly simple, it's radical, and it's all about faith. He just says, look up at the bronze serpent on the pole, and you'll live. That's it. Just look. And here is where it all just clicks into place. Hundreds of years down the road, Jesus himself explains this. He says that just like Moses lifted up that serpent in the wilderness, he too would be lifted up. The parallel is absolutely stunning, isn't it? A symbol of judgment is lifted up for everyone to see, and life, salvation, comes simply by looking at it in faith. Now, our next picture follows a really similar pattern. Here we go again. The people are in a moment of total desperation. They're literally dying of thirst, stuck in this barren wasteland with not a drop of water anywhere. So what happens in the story? God tells Moses to strike a rock, and boom, life-saving water gushes out for everyone. A miracle. But the New Testament gives us this incredible little bit of commentary on what was really going on. The Apostle Paul just casually drops this bombshell. He says that the spiritual rock that was with them in the desert, that rock was Christ. He's the true source of living water that keeps us alive in our own wilderness journeys. And honestly, the list just goes on and on. You see God acting as this faithful shepherd who refuses to give up on his wandering flock. All their failures scream out for a greater leader who can finally get them to the finish line. There's even this wild prophecy from a guy named Balaam that points to a future king, a star, and a scepter that's going to rise out of Israel. So let's pull all these different threads together now. It's time to see how we move from the shadow to the real thing, the substance, the ultimate fulfillment of all these amazing patterns. Look at this. It just lays it all out so clearly. The The lifted serpent was a shadow of Christ being lifted on the cross. That rock pouring out water pointed to Christ, the true living water. The shepherding that God did in the desert finds its absolute perfection in Jesus, the true shepherd. And that coming scepter, well, that's fulfilled in the reigning king. You see, every single shadow finds its powerful, complete meaning in him. Okay, so this is a really fascinating way to read an old book. But why does it matter? I mean, really, why should we care about this today? What are the lessons from a bunch of people wandering in a desert thousands of years ago for our lives right now?
Well, I think there are 4 huge takeaways. First, faith. Salvation is about looking to Christ, not about how hard we can work. Second, perseverance. God is faithful to see us through our own dry wilderness times. Third, there's a serious warning here. Unbelief is no small thing. And finally, and this is the big one, hope. Our ultimate hope isn't in our ability to hang on, but in God's unbreakable, unwavering faithfulness to us.
Let's just make this super personal for a second. I want you to imagine you've been bitten by one of those snakes. It's a fatal bite. You can feel the venom coursing through your veins, and you know with absolute certainty that you are dying. You are completely and totally helpless. There is no cure you can mix up, no antidote you can invent. You cannot save yourself. All your effort, all your striving is completely useless. And in that final desperate moment, someone gives you a single, almost silly-sounding instruction. Hey, look over there, at that pole, and you'll live. That's your only job, to stop looking at the bite, to stop trying to fix it, and just turn your head and look. And that, right there, is the heart of everything we've been talking about. The message of the gospel isn't a call for us to try harder, to do better, to achieve our way to God. It is a radical call to stop trying to save ourselves and to simply look to Christ and be saved. So, that leaves us with one last pretty crucial question to think about. If salvation, at its very core, comes by looking away from ourselves and looking toward Christ, then where is our focus today? Is it on our own efforts, our own achievements, or is it on Him?